Arturo Sarukhán is a former Mexican ambassador to the United States. Welcome to the day, Mr. Ambassador. I read your article in today's America's Quarterly, and if I read it right, you believe that Donald Trump's beef with Mexico is about much more than illegal migrants and fentanyl, and that Mexico has brought some of this trouble on itself.
Yes, undoubtedly, and thanks for reading. I think this is much more deeper than just linkage of tariffs to immigration and fentanyl. In fact, I think that to a great extent, the threat of tariffs, regardless of the fact that they were now explicitly linked to these two issues and that they've been suspended for the next 30 days while cabinet members negotiate, still to be seen details on what the agreement on Monday during the phone call will mean. At the end of the day, I think that what's at stake here is Donald Trump's decision to renegotiate the USMCA, that's the free trade agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the United States, before the formal window of revision that the treaty entails and that's coming down the pike in July of 2026. So in many ways, he doesn't want to wait for that revision, and he doesn't want to wait that long. And so I think that what we will see, despite the fact that they've been suspended for a month, is that this will be a sword of Damocles over the heads of both Canada and Mexico, but particularly regarding Mexico.
And the idea that Mexico brought this on itself?
Well, in many ways, the problem that the Sheinbaum government is facing with Donald Trump is that it's the failings, mistakes, weaknesses of the previous Mexican government, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and President Sheinbaum's political mentor, on a host of fronts, whether it's organized crime, whether it's on the reforms to the judiciary, which basically mean that the judiciary is now being captured by the Mexican executive in the country. All these policies have opened up these fronts of vulnerability and pressure coming from Washington. In many ways, the López Obrador policy, his so-called hugs, not bullets, which was a way of saying that he wasn't going to confront organized crime, became a de facto pax narca, that is sort of, if you don't bother us, we won't bother you. And that's coming home to roost now, because in many ways those hugs, not bullets, became hugs for thugs. And that is why you've seen, along with the threats of punitive tariffs and the thematic linkage between issues that are disassociated in the agenda, the determination to also classify Mexican criminal groups as foreign terrorist organizations, which will occur either today or tomorrow. And what is most important of the executive order that Trump signed on Saturday, formalizing the tariffs against Mexico and Canada, when the language in the White House statement says that there is an alliance between the Mexican government and organized crime, which Washington had never leveled against any Mexican government in the modern history of the relationship.
So Trump has Mexico very firmly in his sights. But when you look at the deal that's been done in return for this suspension of these Trump tariffs, President Sheinbaum has promised to send 10,000 troops to Mexico's northern border. President Trump has agreed to work on reducing the number of guns trafficked into Mexico. I mean, 10,000 troops, is that sustainable?
No, it's not, because what the Mexican government is unfortunately doing is playing a bit of a whack-a-mole. It's a shell game. There already is a significant deployment of National Guard and Army troops on the border. It's been there since Trump first threatened Mexico with the same punitive tariffs linked to migration back in 2019, when he forced López Obrador to deploy National Guards to the border. So what you're seeing now is, yes, there will be an additional deployment, but many of those will either be Marines or Army personnel sent to aid the National Guard on the US-Mexico border. And then there's also an inconsistency, because you just mentioned gun running, gun trafficking. Claudia Sheinbaum, in her readout of the call, mentions this agreement, but Donald Trump doesn't mention a single word on any type of US commitment to address what has long been an irritant in the relationship, which is the gun running the illicit gun running into Mexico from the US.
So many people had hoped that the relationship between the United States and Mexico just got off to, or this new Trump administration and Mexico just got off to a bad start. But it sounds like you think there is worse to come.
I think it could get bumpier indeed. So far, yes, especially if we look at what happened between Saturday and the executive order slapping on the tariffs and the calls with Trudeau and with Sheinbaum yesterday postponing the entry into force for a month. One could argue that there's been much more shock and awe than policy. But I think that if you look forward, given some of the issues at stake in the relationship, given what I think will be the most salient pressure point, which is US efforts to have Mexico do more to prevent fentanyl trafficking from Mexico into the United States, and the legacy that Sheinbaum has inherited from her predecessor in terms of the evisceration of capabilities of the Mexican state, in terms of budget, in terms of manpower, in terms of agency and bandwidth, and in terms of the paradigm, which Sheinbaum is indeed tweaking. But I think that will set this relationship on a bumpy course in the coming years.
OK, bumpy times ahead. We'll see if you are right and hope that you're wrong. Former Mexican ambassador.
I certainly hope I'm wrong.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador. Arturo Sarukhán.